Together, I tried not to keep secrets.
Little Rival Sons for the Soul there. Welcome back to the Mark Cox Show. Just a quick update. They're looking into a stabbing of a airport police officer up in Flint, Michigan. The FBI is leading the investigation. They're not ruling out terrorism, apparently based on some comments made by the attacker. So when we get more details on that, we'll let you know. Right now, let me welcome in Eben Brown from Fox News Radio. He's been covering this Georgia special election result. And what's the reaction down in Georgia this morning, Eben?
Good. Hi there. So in the Georgia 6th District, where this special election runoff took place, there is a lot of celebrating among Republicans who were able to hold on to the seat. This is a seat that has been traditionally a strong Republican seat. It has been for decades. It was occupied by Tom Price before he became Secretary of Health and Human Services. It was Newt Gingrich's seat when he was in Congress and made Speaker of the House. So it was a very important race for Republicans, and they were facing a very strong challenger from Jon Ossoff on the Democratic ticket. There had been a lot of money poured into this race on both sides. I think the grand total is somewhere around $60 million.
Wow.
The end result is that Republicans held it by electing Karen Handel to the post, and she won by about 5-6%. Which was a lot stronger than what the polls were suggesting. For a while, they were suggesting a couple percentage point lead by Mr. Ossoff. By yesterday, it was vacillating a fraction of a point either way. And with the election now over, it was decidedly that the Republicans held on to it.
Yeah.
But Democrats had been hoping to use it as sort of a bellwether or some sort of indicator that the tide had been turning, and that Democrats were or voters were becoming more and more fed up with Republicans and President Trump, and that just didn't happen.
No, I watched Jon Ossoff's speech last night when he conceded. Just like in the initial election, when everybody was still involved, ended up being Handel and Ossoff. His concession speeches sound almost more like victory speeches. I'm getting the impression we haven't seen the last of that guy either.
I would think that you might see him pop up again somewhere in the political world. He's a former congressional aide. It was his first time actually running for office, but he's also a documentary filmmaker. And part of the attack ads against him was that he was able to wrestle a lot of Hollywood money into his campaign efforts, and that prompted the Republican machine to get involved as well. The national fundraising arms of the Republican Party, and this including Paul Ryan's own super PAC. So it was very hard fought. Most people that I spoke to yesterday were, depending on or regardless of who they were voting for, they were happy that it was over because the airwaves were filled with the political messages and nothing else. And it was just, it had been really overkill for these folks here,
yeah.
And it is finally over.
Well, and has anybody commented on the polls? Because I saw a poll from Saturday, so 2 days before the election. CNN ran a poll that showed Ossoff with like a 6-point lead.
Yeah.
And it turned around to where she won by 6 points. Were the polls off that poorly, or was this another example of what happened back in November?
Well, that's a great question. To figure out why a poll didn't work, you really have to decode its methodology, and that means every poll is different, every pollster is different. But if I were someone who commissioned polls, I would be looking at how they were calling this race and how they were calling the presidential race in November, and really watch their track record. The pollsters have been grossly wrong, and it could just be that they're not necessarily doing anything poorly. They're just, a lot of polling is done by using sampling data from previous races in the area or in the district or whatever to sort of judge where turnout is best going to be. And I think one thing we've learned with this and with the presidential race, there's a lot more turnout, and that turnout is not typical.
Yeah, it's a good point. Eben Brown, Fox News Radio. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. Yeah, good to get Eben's thoughts on the. I think a lot of pollsters need to be fired. When do you have a 12-point turnaround in a race? That's sad.
I think